You are listening to a podcast by the Little School of Happiness. My name is Sandra Hayes and I'm your host. Here you will find episodes on all the Vedic teachings like yoga, Ayurveda and Vedic Astrology. For more information about me and my offerings, please go to sandrahayes.eu, or if you're in Germany, sandrahayes.de. I'm here today with Aoife Driver, the lovely Aoife. She's been a colleague of mine and a friend since we started our Jyotish journey, studying Jyotish with Marianne Jacuzzi since, I think, about 5 years ago now, or I think so, yeah. It's been some journey really since, and Marianne is the most amazing teacher. Maybe one day we'll have her on here as well. But yeah, for today, welcome, Aoife.
Thank you.
And maybe before we get started on Jyotish, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey? How did you find Jyotish and why? And why does it fascinate you?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Sandra, for having me on. We should definitely have Marianne on.
That would be amazing, yeah.
Yes. I suppose like everything, it was a circuitous route to Vedic astrology. It's not something that I sought, but it feels right. It really feels like part of my path. So I'm based in Ireland. I'm based in County Wicklow in Ireland. And my original background was in holistic therapies, actually beauty therapy firstly, when I left college. But I found a real love of holistic studies, working with people, connecting with people, using aromatherapy, massage. And so my early career was a little bit in the beauty industry, but I found that a little kind of limiting. So I just enjoyed the connecting with people on a deeper level that the massage could provide. So at around, I suppose in my 20s, then I found yoga. It's just after I had my second child, and I just started to take some yoga classes. They were asana-based physical classes. But it started to open up a door into, something that was just a little bit more interesting to me. And so I started doing Bikram. Now, Bikram yoga is very intense. Bear in mind, I was in my 20s. Anyone can, I suppose, withstand a hot room and that kind of intensity in their 20s. But my God, it was powerful work. It was transformational. When I think back, it was very competitive. It was very kind of Martian energy, actually, very Mars energy, in the heat, in front of a mirror, half dressed. You wanted to get to the front so everyone could see how good you were. And there was not one mention of philosophy. There was a little bit of pranayama. There wasn't sun salutations. But something about that really sparked an interest for me in the transformational power of yoga. And this was just asana. So I craved more information. And after a while, it didn't really serve me anymore. I was having my third child. I didn't want to practice it really in pregnancy. And so I found Ashtanga. And around that time, I decided to do teacher training. So I began my teacher training, and this is where I met Marianne. So this is the first time I met Marianne. This was my introduction to her.
Did you do your teacher training in the elbow room?
I did my teacher training in the yoga room. She used to go between the two. Yeah. And it was a wonderful time. It was actually 10 years ago this year. So a bit of an anniversary that I did my training. And I loved it. And then one day we knew we were going to have a philosophy module. And none of this had been introduced to me before. I was still very much on the physical level with this. And she walked in the door and sat down and did a 3-hour talk I still remember the first time I saw her, and she introduced concepts to me that were new, but they weren't new. Like, they blew my mind, but I knew them on a really deep level. And I thought,
Yeah,
oh,
I know
this is
exactly what
what
you
I've
mean. Yeah.
been searching for. And I'd made a really good friend on the course, and the two of us walked back to my car, I remember afterwards, and we both said, oh my God, the way I see the world has changed. Like, that sounds so dramatic.
Mm,
That's what it was. I just saw things differently. And that was my introduction into, the Vedas to a certain extent, I suppose. In the 200-hour teacher training, it is really introductory, isn't it?
yeah. Mm,
And foundational. So the Vedas, the concepts of the Vedas, the concepts that are contained within Patanjali's sutras. This is what she was introducing to me, and it was new to me, and it blew my mind. And so I finished the training, loved the training, started teaching, but stayed in contact with Marianne. And I was lucky enough to go on a yoga retreat with her a few years later. And each day she did a 2-hour talk on Vedic astrology. And I think she was learning it at that time as well. And I remember sitting there, I just let it wash over me. And I thought, oh my God, this is so interesting. But I could never
yeah.
grasp these concepts. She was showing me the math. She was showing me how to make calculations, and I was like, I think you're amazing, but this is not something that I can do in this lifetime. But it's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
We can't plan for these things,
Well,
and
I
so
thought differently about that. Yeah.
yeah.
Yes,
um
it's really interesting because I actually met Marian in pretty much the same way as you. Um, also, that's why I was asking, because I was doing I did teacher training, my first teacher training in Wexford. But then I realized really quickly that it's Ashtanga that I want to do. So I went to do another one with David Collins. And I was really hungry at the time for information and for trainings. And so I did the advanced teacher training in the Elbow Room. And that's where they had the philosophy module. And Marian came in for that. And I think it was, I can't remember, it was a few days. Uh, was it a week or a weekend? I can't remember. But it's the same thing. I remember sitting there in front of her, just completely awestruck. Um, and I had been studying philosophy before that. I've done a 250-hour course with Brenda Feuerstein at the same time, actually, as well. But
this is
uh,
Georg Fierstein's wife.
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Mhm. Yeah, that was really amazing too. It was really, really deep and really good. And I've always had an interest in the philosophy, and I've done, Buddhist studies and all of that. But it really was Marian who opened some very, very particular door inside of me that made the connection possible between the philosophy and real life and real experience. And I remember she did that because, or through her little exercises. She gave us little thought exercises or thought experiments or something that left us feeling what she wanted to convey to us in the philosophy. And I remember going home really empowered as well. And after that, in Wexford, I started a philosophy cafe. Every now and then, in the place that I was teaching at the time, we had like coffee and cake and philosophy talks and yoga sutras. It was really nice. But yeah,
I wish
she,
I'd known you then.
yeah, God, it was really, really nice. Yeah. Um, and later, then, when I heard that she was teaching Jyotish, to be really honest, I mean, I did have an interest in it. I was always interested in astrology when I was young. When I was 18, I made some money by calculating charts for people in Western astrology with the big books, without the computers, just doing that. But I hadn't thought about Jyotish, and I hadn't done astrology in a long time as well, only because it was Marian offering the course that I really wanted to do it, because I just wanted an opportunity to study with her. That
That
was
is
really
completely
my
my
main,
experience as well,
yeah.
because she embodies this wisdom.
Mm,
Not an
absolutely. Yeah.
academic. teaching. It really is, a guru shining
Mhm.
light on the
Absolutely.
subject.
Yeah.
And I first heard about the course and I thought, well, I can't afford it. I don't have the intellectual capacity for it. But
Mm.
my God, I would love to
Oh, you
continue
do.
my studies with Marianne. And then something happened in my life. It was quite a dramatic, emotional thing. And I woke up one morning and thought, no, I am going to do this.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm going to find the money for it, which I did.
Mhm.
And I'm going to find the time for it. And I suppose in a way I was lucky. I wonder, was it a different experience for you? But it was only supposed to be a study of 2 years, but it got extended because of COVID.
Yeah.
So it became a longer study.
Yeah, I know, and it all changed because I think I was actually the first one who signed up for the course, and for a while I was the only one, and she already thought I was going to stay the only one, and she was even prepared to just do it with one person because that's the way she works, isn't it? And it was meant to be in person. We were all in Dublin, in Ireland at the time. I was in Wexford, she was in Dublin and Monkstown, and then COVID came, and then she decided to move it in, to make it an online course. And for that reason, it was cheaper as well. Because originally it meant to include the Sardinia retreat,
Right.
which
Yeah.
we couldn't do
In
during COVID, of
2020.
course.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then over this, the online switch to online, more people signed up. And then it was all of you guys signed up. And what's really funny as well is that we were all in Ireland at the time. But during COVID, everything got mixed up and everything got transformed and changed and thrown into the air. And I think probably you're the only one still living in
I'm
Ireland.
the only one in Ireland. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, we went on then to do a mentorship, which was an
Yeah.
extended time. So I think
Yeah.
really we've probably been studying now for 5 years, I
Five
think.
years. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we did get eventually to have the retreat 4 years
Yeah,
later. We were
that was
lucky
the
enough
most
to go
amazing
to
experience, that
Sardinia.
retreat, wasn't it? Yeah, yeah,
Yes, yeah, it
absolutely.
was very
Oh,
special.
yeah, and
A lovely
Sardinia
way to
is,
honor our studies.
yeah, absolutely. And I actually never forget it because I was so happy, first of all, to see Marianne at the airport. That was just the most amazing thing altogether. And she, of course, picked every single one of us up. And we were waiting at the airport for Lebanese to
Mhm.
arrive. And in the meantime, Marianne and myself had some dinner. And we both ordered some fish, and we ate the fish. And then on the drive home through the mountains and, in the little car going left and right and around the curves, I got so, so sick. And the first thing when we arrived, I had to throw up. And I had this really
Cleansing.
strong feeling. Yeah, that was, and I had this really strong feeling though. While I'm on this island, I am not to eat meat or fish. And I didn't then. And
Mm.
I felt really there was something about this island as well, this island of Sardinia, that to me was so powerful and healing, and the
Yeah.
sheer beauty of it alone, I just,
Natural beauty. It's very wild.
yeah, there's
Yeah,
like flowers everywhere. And even the
flowers
healing rocks
everywhere and
are pink and full
rocks.
of crystals and just
Rocks
amazing.
emerging from the ocean, and we got to
Yeah,
swim, of course, in that natural pool that was
yeah,
inside the sea,
yeah. And we
formed
were
by the
doing
rocks.
Yeah, we were doing this study of the Mahavidyas, of the Shaktis, and how to find them in the chart. And then we'd go, and Marian would take us through the most amazing pathways and on a walking meditation, and we would chant the mantra to the Shakti in the most amazing hidden places. It was just, it was incredible. It's a really, really incredible experience.
It was. It was.
Yeah,
I think we can set up the Marianne fan club here now, and
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Marian,
yeah.
you're
So
doing
that's
this.
really, yeah, that's
You're
really my
doing.
experience.
Yeah, totally. Let's talk a little bit maybe about Jyotish, because maybe not everyone who's listening knows what actually is it. What are they talking about, and what's the difference also between Vedic astrology and Western astrology? Because there's a big difference, isn't there?
There is a big difference, and we can get very technical about that difference. But I suppose what I'll do is just put it into a little bit of context. I think the first thing that's worth mentioning is that Vedic astrology is from the Vedas. I mean,
Yeah.
we can tell from the name, and this is an ancient source. I mean, it depends on the source that you look at. Some people date the Vedas to 500 BC. Some people date the Vedas to 5000 BCE. But we know that the Vedas are ancient. They're sacred scripture, and from the Vedas came yoga. And this is, I suppose, where the overlap is with Vedic astrology. And from the Vedas, of course, came Ayurvedic medicine, which you know very well. And religions and different spiritual practices stem from the Vedas as well. Hinduism, Buddhism, they all have their roots in this ancient source.
And like you say, they are ancient, and they used to be an oral tradition even before they were written down. So they really go back to really, really old times. We will never know. And going by the actual description in the Vedas on the origins of it, it goes right back to the beginnings of time, really, and which is maybe one of the reasons why Jyotish is one of the Vedangas, one of the pre-studies to the Vedas that was before we understand the Vedas in their original form. We should study these 6 other aspects to even be able to understand it, and most of them have to do with Sanskrit, but one of them is Jyotish, and it is the study of time as well, and of light moving through space, which is time. And so we get to the origin of the Vedic teachings is really at the beginning of time. So it's an amazing thing, and they talk about the beginning, or the qualities of time as well, because now in our days, in our Western minds, we think of time as something linear and something that is a quantity, but not necessarily a quality. But in the Vedic sense, time is not just a quantity, but a quality, and time is not linear, but cyclical. And in that sense, we can think about time as changing in the quality of consciousness as well. And
that's beautiful.
There is the concept also of the yugas, which those who practice yoga will probably know, or who are in any way familiar with yoga philosophy. They will know about the yugas, and their time frames, or time cycles of a particular quality of consciousness. That the closer we are to ourselves, the more we are connected to ourselves, the higher our consciousness. And because we are not separate, we're one with everything. We are an expression of the whole universe, and even in the whole universe, or in the at least in our solar system, or in our galaxy, there is a center point, a dark star, or a black hole that is the galactic center. And according to these mythologies, the closer we are to that galactic center, the higher our consciousness, or the more we are capable of understanding higher concepts. And this highest of yugas, or highest of ages, where most of us would have maybe been able to understand really all these subtle knowledge, is called the Satya Yuga, the age of truth. And it's said that all these teachings, all these Vedic teachings from Ayurveda, yoga, Jyotish, they're all coming from an age of truth, from Satya Yuga, and are passed down through the ages, and eventually they were written down in scriptures, and eventually now they are been spread across the world, and we can all study them and read them, and which is amazing.
Yeah, and this is said to be Shruti, which is received information. This was not conceived by, by one person or a collective group of people. This is received information.
Yeah,
And for us to be able to use this as a tool, Jyotish, of course, means the science of light, to shed light. And just even in the mundane experiences that we have in life, by looking at our birth charts in particular, which would be I suppose, our speciality, it really does provide us with a way to explore our path in this lifetime, which is said to be a path of spiritual evolution.
yeah,
And it offers so much validation uh, for clients. We see this over and over again, not per se, to tell someone that they're going to, come into a lot of money, or particularly meet someone. Perhaps, there are themes of that in a chart, but just to validate your experience on a soul level. So your birth chart is a snapshot of your karma in this lifetime. It's a
yeah,
snapshot of your soul on this journey. And there are 12 constellations, 12 houses. It maps very nicely onto the hero's journey. Actually, the first house
yeah,
represents the self, the 12th house then being moksha, which is spiritual liberation, which is, spiritual freedom, the ultimate letting go. And it's so fascinating I suppose it's an honor to explore each chart and look at the complexity of
absolutely.
the energies of these planets, in the energies of these constellations, in the energies of these houses, which represent different aspects of this human experience. Because, like what you were saying, the way Marianne gave this information to you, it was empowering, because it wasn't just a big concept. you
Yeah,
know it was applicable to your your
exactly.
soul's journey, your inner experience in this lifetime. And
Yeah,
the human condition is to be very judgmental about ourselves, very critical about ourselves. And for me, it's been very freeing to explore my chart and think, no, this is exactly how I'm supposed to be in this lifetime. I have
yeah.
a lot of Southern energy. I'm a very
That's
serious
it, isn't
person.
it? It's like
That's
being validated.
okay.
Yeah, it's like being validated by the universe, by the stars.
Yeah,
It's such a
yeah.
beautiful thing to see, and I'm sure you've had that too with clients, when you see clients and you're able to explain something to them, and they feel a sort of a relief and a kind of a validation that it's okay, it's really good the way they are, it's absolutely perfect the way they are, and that alone is absolutely beautiful about it. And
Yeah.
also, the kind of karmic patterns that we can see in the stars, it's not really so mystical if you think about it, because there's a lot of people who would say, astrology, I don't know. It's not really scientific, is it? But yeah, that's to our Western mind, and maybe, a little bit spoiled by the kind of newspaper astrology that we're all fed sometimes. But the Vedic astrology is really something completely different to
It
that.
is. It
And
is very different.
yeah,
And what really appeals to me in terms of the difference between Western astrology and Vedic astrology is that Vedic astrology is called sidereal astrology. It's um, fixed star astrology, which means that it's astronomically correct.
yeah,
So
it
I
goes
could
with the stars as they actually are.
As they actually are. You could hold up your app, or you could hold up a telescope. And if you're looking at your ephemeris, you're looking at where the planets are supposed to be at this very moment in this particular degree. That is exactly where they are.
Yeah,
That's because Vedic astrology is based on the fixed stars. And the stars are fixed, of course. It's us that are moving.
yeah,
Whereas with Western astrology, and they come from different traditions. Of course, Western would be more based in, I suppose, the Greek ancient traditions. Western astrology, then, of course, is fixed to the equinoxes, isn't it? The
Yeah,
tropical system.
yeah.
And
We
this,
try to
because,
match the beginning of the zodiac with the beginning of the seasons, which is
yes,
not really real. It doesn't,
yes.
yeah,
And because the Earth's axis has a little bit of a wobble in it, which, we talked about the Aya Namsha, um, there's about 23 degrees difference now between Western and Vedic astrology. So going back to what I said earlier about, you can see exactly if, hold up your app and see, Venus is exactly there in Cancer
yeah,
or wherever. That's because the Vedic astrology takes into account this wobble in the Earth's axis. So sometimes I'd have clients come to me who firstly identify with their Western sign, which I suppose we should say is not necessarily your ascendant sign in Vedic astrology. That's a big difference for people. So if you're, say, a Leo in Western and you've always looked at your horoscope and you're like, oh no, I'm definitely a Leo, you can get a bit of a shock when you come for Vedic astrology because it's based on the constellation that was on the horizon at the moment of your birth. So it could be a different ascendant, which is the underlying flavor of your whole chart, and will tell you who your lord is, which of the planets is the lord of your chart, which is really important.
Which is then influencing the whole chart.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other fascinating thing also is that in the Western astrology, you have the 12 constellations where, the sun seems to move through that band of constellations, and that makes up the 12 zodiac constellations.
Yeah.
But in the Vedic astrology, we also have the constellation where the moon moves through the 27 nakshatras or lunar constellations, which makes it just that much more complex and exact in that sense as well. And nakshatras, they are really so telling. I use them a lot in the chart interpretation, and I find them so they reveal a lot.
They reveal a lot more depth. It's like going deeper and deeper and deeper. So within each constellation, there's 3 or 4 nakshatras, and so we're able to look at what I really appeals to me is, we look at who the ruling deity is, who the ruling planet is. And, these archetypal, the symbology of that is really powerful actually to explore with people. And I suppose what's been humbling for me is prior to readings, I used to try and assume how this energy of this nakshatra or this graha, this planet, may have played out in their lives. But, who are we to know? It's really fascinating when you have a conversation with people and they say, no, this is my experience. And you think, yes, of course. On a universal level, this makes so much sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really is fascinating. There's a quote that I have. Now, this is not to minimize Western astrology because, of course, they have equal value. But there's a quote in the Andrew Mason book, and we've just touched on the additional depth of the nakshatras, but it says that as one convert from Western astrology once jokingly put it to me, you might comfortably squeeze the entirety of Western astrology into a matchbox and set it afloat upon the ocean of Vedic astrology. And I do remember talking to Marianne about, oh my God, how can we ever? Everything is such a tip of the iceberg. And she reminded me, of course, and I'd heard this before, that it's the study of many lifetimes.
Yeah,
not just a lifetime.
It absolutely is. Yeah, I really think so too. And it's not only that, that there's 27 nakshatras, and within those, each of the nakshatras, there are the different padas, and each of them are ruled by a different planet. And then on top of that, there are divisions of charts as well. It's not only the birth chart, but you can literally zoom into any area of the chart and make a whole different chart, which then, comes out with 60 extra charts.
Yes, and that's been really fascinating as well. Some are related to the D9 is used a lot, of course.
Yeah.
It's called the spouse chart, but it really is looking
How
at the
about yeah.
fruition of your karma in this lifetime. It's pointing to the direction in which things are going.
Hmm.
And you can explore if the time is accurate enough, the birth time is accurate enough, we can even
Yeah,
look at the D60 in terms of past life. That's
yeah.
really fascinating as well.
Very fascinating. Yeah, but you do need for the higher the divisions, the more accurate you need the birth time, and that's not always easy, but
No, and in
can
Ireland in
be useful.
particular, it's not easy. It was not
Yeah.
the birth time was not on the birth certificates until I don't know, maybe about 20 years ago. Now they're on it, but we don't know whether that sometimes that they're rounded up. You know, sometimes are very
I'm
neat.
sure they do sometimes. Yeah, they do round it up or down. But
But
I've
just to
had
say that you can ask your hospital, your
exactly.
maternity hospital as part, you know, this is your
Yeah,
information.
I was
So you
just going to
can
say.
ask for the time.
Yeah, I've had a few clients from Ireland who did that. They just called the hospital or wrote to the hospital. And in some cases, I remember one, she was born in a hospital that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And she still was able to somehow find, her birth time, because usually they're very helpful, and they're archived somewhere. It just has to be found.
And there are
Um,
corrections that you can do. You know, you
yeah.
can look at a time and gather information and make
Mhm.
an educated guess.
Yeah.
Um,
And even if you don't have the birth time at all, then there are still other ways, like using the moon as a lagna or as a central point. Then that can be used as well, and it's really telling too. And I've
hmm,
used that a few times as well. And just recently with the chart that I shared with you about the my ancestors' baby, my great grandmother's baby who died in as a child during the war, and I was really fascinated about her story. So I did the chart for her, and it was very interesting, even though I didn't have the time, but you could still see a lot of interesting things. So
hmm.
there's still a lot you can do
There can be,
about the
because
birth
part of our
time.
course is actually to study 10 charts of family members or people who are very close to us.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to see the patterns that emerge from families. It's definitely pointing to some maybe karmic connection between ourselves and our extended families, which I found really interesting as well.
Yeah, that is very interesting. It's a really fascinating subject. And it's kind
Mm,
of, I think of it sometimes as like a biologist, would be trained to read the patterns of your DNA in order to find connections and find strengths or weaknesses in terms of disease, possible disease, or in terms of the body. And as an astrologer, we're kind of trained to see patterns in the stars, uh, uh,
yeah. And
that tell about your karmic DNA and your soul's DNA. And it's really, really interesting and really helpful to have
yeah.
that knowledge.
And going back to yoga and Patanjali sutras, one of the niyamas is swadhyaya, which is
Yes. Yeah,
self-knowledge, which is study of the self. And I really think we are doing ourselves a great service by knowing ourselves. You know, the Greek
yeah,
philosophers talked about know thyself. You could
absolutely.
study your own chart
Mm,
forever.
mm,
And
absolutely.
to know yourself as you move through this world is actually very powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, there's no better way than Jyotish to really deeply know yourself and understand
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah,
And feel, like I said before, feel validated as well. And often it's people, I'm sure it's probably your experience as well, when you have clients coming to you, most of the time they are people who are finding themselves in some difficulty in life, or some,
yeah.
faced with a subject, or with something, an issue that they don't understand. Why is that happening to them? Why does that keep happening? Or why are they not getting anywhere in any particular area, or something like that? And that's when they sometimes make an
Yeah.
appointment.
And
And it really does help to shed light on exactly things like that. Why is that? What is that karma behind it? And most importantly, And maybe that's a difference as well to Western astrology, but I'm not quite sure, is that Vedic astrology really offers remedies as well, and
Yes.
offers ways how that karma can somehow be lightened or
Yes.
helped.
Well, to know that this is part of your journey and part of your soul's evolution is comforting. You know, I think when I had my first reading, I realized I was going through a particularly difficult period of my life. I hadn't studied Jyotish yet, but I realized I was in Sadi Sati. And of course, this is a time that happens to all of us. It's about a 7.5 year
Sequence,
period
yeah.
that happens 3 or 4 times in our
Yeah.
lifetime. And they're the lessons of Saturn. So Saturn is teaching us about the transience of things, the temporality of things, and
Yeah.
it's teaching us to let go. And these lessons can be very painful, but knowing that Saturn is upon your moon, and this is why you're experiencing what you're experiencing, can be quite empowering. It is a process. It will end.
Yeah.
And always in hindsight, you come out a stronger, you come out. And Saturn, of course, is the planet of wisdom. He's the planet of yoga. And so it's a gift. And this learning can't be academic. It has to be experiential. You know, you have to go
Absolutely.
through it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. You can't just theoretically learn any of those life's lessons. It's not possible.
no, it's
You have
painful.
to feel it. You have to
It's
feel
a
it in that
process.
setting. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's something maybe that in our society has been largely forgotten, that the importance of our emotions in learning, because we're trained so much to learn academically in our heads, sitting in schools, and that we associate that with learning. But the emotions play such an important role in
Yeah.
learning, in any learning, really. You know, even in school learning, we can only really learn well when we enjoy it, and when we emotionally are engaged in something. But that's one thing. But in life, we need to completely feel something, and
We
go
do.
through
Yeah.
the layers of our consciousness in that experience, from the physical to the emotional to the deeply mental and spiritual layers. And only when we experienced all those layers, then we really, have transformed and have learned something in the
Yeah.
spiritual sense.
And this is what yoga actually gives us the tool to do. You know, asana, we start to connect into our bodies to know ourselves. And this is why I feel that Vedic astrology is a deepening of this connection,
Yeah.
and supplementing, I suppose, what we can learn through yoga.
Yeah.
And what you were saying about the intellectual mind is quite interesting because, of course, Mercury represents the intellectual mind, but the moon represents the emotional mind, the sensory mind, and they are represented quite differently in a chart.
Yeah.
And the moon is very impressionable, and we can really look in a chart and see the impressions that are upon the moon, and honor our emotional maturity as much as our intellectual ability is very important.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the other things that's different to Vedic astrology is the dasha systems as well, which is
Yeah, absolutely.
we're going through different phases
Yeah.
that are
It
set
will
in
tell
place
you.
actually by the moon at the time of our birth.
Yeah.
And this is really important information as to overriding themes that we might be experiencing on an inner level, and of
Yeah.
course on a mundane external level as well.
It
To
will
be able
tell
to
you
give all this
when.
information to people is so empowering for them.
Absolutely. Yeah, good that you mention it. Yeah, that the dashas are so important because it will actually tell you as well when something in your chart is going to be activated. And it's really important also a little bit in prediction astrology as well, because you can see, when will a certain part of your chart be activated and what quality might, arise through that. And then we can be prepared for that,
We can
to
be
have for
prepared
that
for
energy
that.
to
Yeah.
activate. Mm.
And as you mentioned, the remedies, there's very beautiful, simple remedies that we can do to raise up the energy of planets that perhaps are weakened in our chart. These are ancient remedies, you know, simple things like wearing particular jewelry to the skin, on a particular finger, wearing different colors, you know, drinking milk for moon, like the really beautiful.
Strengthen the energy of the different planets in yourself, in your psyche, and one of my favorite remedies actually that I tend to use. Well, one is mantra, but that I use more and more in my life, actually, that I find really powerful. But the other one that is I find very important and very powerful is charity.
Yes.
That's, you know, something that is so
service.
easily overlooked in the Western side, or maybe, you know, it's seen as, oh, this is, you know, some superstition or something, but actually it really has a powerful effect when I am giving something, when I'm putting my attention and my energy from my heart into a certain area outside of myself, then that area exists in me, of course, as well, and I'm strengthening that area within me as well. So if I am, for example, doing something good for, you know, children or younger people, then I'm strengthening my Mercury at the same time. Or if I'm helping an outcast or homeless person or something, I'm strengthening my Saturn in my chart. And, you know, this is something that's really, really beautiful remedy that is actually really effective as well.
It is, and we can even be specific enough to do it on a particular day that honors the planet that you are strengthening.
That's beautiful. If I could talk for hours with you now, and maybe we will too, but not all at once. I would really like to get together for many more sessions and talk about the different aspects of Jyotish. But
I'd love to get into more of the specifics.
Yeah, let's do that. So for now, thanks so much for meeting with me and for being here and doing that with me.
Thank you, Sandra. It's been an absolute pleasure.
You were listening to a podcast by the Little School of Happiness. For more information, please go to sandrahayes.eu, or if you are in Germany, sandrahayes.de.